citizens to exercise their constitutional right to vote in South Africa's multi-party democracy. It wanted Parliament to change the law in addition to the wide general provisions of the Promotion of Access to Information Act to ensure regular disclosure by political parties of the sources of their private funding. Now, for analysis on this issue, we're joined from our Pretoria studios by Professor Shadrack Gutto. A very good morning to you, Professor. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning to you and to the viewers.
Professor, what's your take on the Constitutional Court ruling with regards to this matter?
To which matter at this point?
The fact that My Vote Counts have lost their bid to compel political parties to publicly disclose from who or where their funding comes from.
Well, I think that this matter was handled by the Constitutional Court, and the decision of the majority was basically that the argument should have been based on Section 32 of the Constitution dealing with the whole question around that deal with disclosure of information, the right to information held by the state, but also the right of information held by any other person if those are important for purposes of protecting one's rights. And therefore, the majority did point out that that should have been the basis of the argument from a legal point of view. The minority, however, thought that that was already implied in the court. So we are dealing here with a situation where the majority have given a direction on what to do. It was not really, not everything was lost. And I think that is a good opening to indicate that the process may have to go back and be done properly. And if it is done properly, the majority in the Constitutional Court will actually rule in favor of the applicants or those who are really bringing the matter before the court. So I would think here that it is a question of technicality, but technicality based on the law. It was not saying they didn't have a right to be able to pursue the matter before the court.
In your view, Professor, how important is it for political parties to disclose who their funders are?
From a political point of view, as a citizen of the country and as a citizen of Africa and the world, I would say that political parties need to disclose fully the sources of their funding. If they don't do so, they cannot claim to be capable of running government and the state in a transparent, accountable, and open manner as required, at least in our constitution in South Africa. Because you can't say you are shielding the sources of your income, but when you go to run a government, you will be open. It is a contradiction. And I believe that it is a very important issue that ought to be pursued to the last, because if we don't, then people think that when they vote, they are the ones that influence and direct how policies are made, how laws are made in the country in their interests. But in reality, it is the main funders. So finance, which is oblique and not known, are the ones that actually do influence policy making and law making in the country, are not the voters. So it is extremely important matter for citizens in any country, not just in South Africa.
Talking about the international benchmarks, the standard around the world, do we comply? Should it be better?
Well, we really don't. We don't have to comply, because there may be best practices in some countries, and we can try to adapt those best practices. But in reality, the majority of the countries in the world do not require this full disclosure of the sources of funding. All they do is to limit the amount of funds and donations that can be given to political parties. So I wouldn't say here that we do have really a best practice in the world, and that does not mean we don't set best practice in South Africa. I think we should, because our constitution gives us the parameter within which to be able to do that. There are political parties in this country, at least one opposition party I know of, I don't want to mention them, who said they will be willing to disclose provided all other political parties do disclose. And it is not only the donors, but also the companies they hold, which do business, and all of those must be disclosed.
Do you, in your view, do you think that organizations or people who fund political parties in general pull the strings or even have an effect on the way a country is run?
Definitely, because companies they don't just donate or give money to political parties. If the political parties they are giving the money is in a position to make policies or to make laws, they influence that. And companies want to pretend that you have the private sector on the one hand and you have the state and government on the other hand. That separation becomes really confused when in reality the business then determines state and government policy and operations and so on. And companies do not want to be known. So it is not only political parties that are opposing this transparency that is needed, it is also big business that do not want to be known how they get business procurement from government and so on because of their donations. And I think that destroys the whole myth about competitiveness in a capitalist political economy where people compete, because those who hand in a lot of money to the political parties that are in power, whether it is at municipal level, provincial level, or national level, do not want to disclose why they are getting procurement, because those procurements are given based on how they influence it through money. So we don't want money democracy. We want people-based democracy.
Finally, do you think the voters in South Africa care enough about who pays?
I think South Africans, if this was put to the referendum or a vote or a plebiscite in the country for people to express themselves, I believe that the majority of citizens will say, yes, we want openness and transparency in the way in which the country is run. We don't want a country run by money when we believe that we as citizens are the ones who influence the direction or the policies and the philosophy of governance in the country. I think it contributes to good governance, and you can't say you are engaged in good governance when you are actually secretive to your own citizens and the voters in a country.
Professor Gutto, thank you for joining us this morning. That's Professor Shadrack Gutto coming to you live from the capital, Pretoria, talking about funding of political parties here in South Africa. Now, the country says it plans to approach the political body of the International Criminal Court to get clarity on the interpretation of the Rome Statute